Well, after a week's hiatus, I have returned, sort of the summer vacation, if you will. So I have to say this, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Belly up to the bar, we've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. I think Angel's going to be the bartender tonight. She pours with the best of them. And the lava lamp, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, to my left, your right, is in fact lighted. You can be watching right now on the SHR Media Network YouTube channel. SHR Media has its own YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, enter into the search SHR Media, and you will find this channel that has myself live right this very microsecond. Also, you can listen on Spreaker, and if you go to shrmedia.com, you'll be able to hear live and you'll be able to interact in chat directly right here, right now. But I've got to say this. We don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. Of course, the speech is free. That's guaranteed, especially here, these days. But the booze is not. All we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. Wow. You have to ask yourself, when you wake up in the morning, do you find yourself asking this very pointed question? I wonder what kind of absolutely ridiculous shite is going to step off today. It just gets worse and worse every day. And just when you think that it can't get more stupid, particularly on the left, and we are going to illustrate that tonight, I should say, here in the saloon, just when you think that it cannot possibly get more ridiculous, it does in fact get more ridiculous. The left doubles down on being stupid. Plus, the left is becoming more and more violent every day that we watch. And it's splayed all across television, captured by the leftists, and we watch certain personnel step back from doing their damn jobs. And would it shock you to think that we're going to talk about that too tonight? Mary Brockman, see you in chat. It's good to see you. So come on, come all. Bring all your friends. Unfortunately, I wasn't on last week, either Tuesday or Thursday, and not on Sackheads on Wednesday. But after taking care of a few things, I couldn't even say it was necessarily this is sad. I can't even say it was necessarily a vacation. There was just a lot of crap that I had to take care of, and a lot of stuff that I had to do, and a lot of tasks, etc. But I'm bad. Hey, we all get a little bit of a break, do we not? The only problem is that there's no real fill-in for the show. Although I've asked Rush Limbaugh and Mark Stein if they would come in and host the show in my absence. Mark Stein said no, he's cleaning his fish tank perennially. And Rush Limbaugh said no, he's balancing his checkbook and checking for lint in his pockets. So how sad that really is. Tonight, we're going to have Dan Butcher. And I asked him on last week. We had to move things around a little bit. And I see Mike is in chat. Welcome to Mike. We had to move things around a little bit, and I'm hoping that Melanie will come back on this Thursday. So I had to rearrange the schedule a little bit last Thursday. The Underground Professor will be here this coming Thursday, I should say. Melanie Collette, who has her very own show, of course, Money Talk with Melanie. And you can listen to it right here on the SHR Media Network. And you mustn't miss that, because if you want to find out what's going on with cash, money, all things fiscal and financial, then she's the person to listen to. And of course, if we want to know anything about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, our rights, freedoms, etc., well, by gum, that's why I talk to the Underground Professor on Thursdays. The funny thing is, when Dan Butcher gets here, we're going to talk about, oddly enough, not too many politics, but we are going to talk about the terrible things that are occurring in Texas right now. And I did not know this, but apparently there's some kind of a tropical depression that's affecting the D.C. area as well. And I hadn't heard about that, but apparently there's some pretty serious rains up in the D.C. area, too. My wife has her sister who lives in Louisiana, and apparently now Hurricane Harvey is moving east. And as we all know, if you look at a geographic map of the United States of America, you can see that Louisiana happens to be right next to Texas. And New Orleans, if you want to hear the most potentially terrible irony of ironies, it's this. Now, I'm sure we all remember the terrible incident with Katrina when it hit New Orleans. And if you remember, Mayor Nagin in New Orleans was abjectly unprepared. And the mantle for that got laid on the shoulders of President Bush. In my opinion, though I did not care for much of what President Bush did, it was about 60-40, I guess. In any event, that should not have been laid at the foot of President Bush. Because what everybody seems to remember, or forget, I should say, is that the federal government, they're not the first responders. They cannot be in all of these places that are affected by floods, by natural catastrophes such as this. They just don't have the people and the manpower. They can't do it all, so they are not the first responders. They will help. They will come in. They will provide assistance, and of course the U.S. government provides money, etc., and a lot of coordination. That's mostly their job. Nagin, at the time when Katrina hit, was woefully unprepared, and I'm sure everyone can remember the terrible, and in my opinion it was terrible, photograph of this massive lot of yellow school buses sitting in water because someone somewhere decided that they couldn't be moved. Because apparently they couldn't find enough people with bus driver licenses to get aboard. Hello. Earth to people in situations like that. What you do is say, can anyone competently drive a large vehicle? And whether you're equipped, your license says you can drive a bus or not, do you think maybe we could find 60 to 100 people to drive these buses out of the lot while it's not flooded and begin to move people out of the city of New Orleans? That was one terrible, terrible issue. And then, of course, there was the thing that is terribly ironical, just dripping with irony, is many of the people were uprooted from New Orleans. Tons of people. A number of them ended up moving, literally, up out of New Orleans, out of Louisiana, and guess where they went? Guess where many people went because of the floods of Katrina? If you said Houston, you'd be absolutely correct. Now, HP Pundit, Dan Butcher, has said that he's called in, and I have not heard that yet. So, darn. Why is this not working? Because I've got everything plugged in, and the other thing is that I checked the line myself earlier. Let's try doing this. I'm looking at chat. Mary Brockman says, yes, Texas. And yes, that's absolutely correct. But many of them didn't just go to Texas. They went to Houston. What do we know about Houston? It's a port city, meaning it's directly on the water. Meaning that, the same folks that got hit by Katrina and moved and went to Houston have just got hit once again. And now there are going to be people that have been hit and impacted terribly twice by two separate hurricanes. And of course, the leftists are trying to lay this incident directly at the feet of President Trump. He's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. First, the left-wing media said, if President Trump goes there, his presence is such a terribly interrupting event that it will cause emergency responders to throw a camshaft and they won't be able to take care of what they need. Then there were others who said, if he doesn't go, then what that means is he doesn't care about what's happening. So he went. That should come as no shock. His wife happened to wear heels during that, and then she got shafted by the left-wing media for wearing heels. Then when she wore sneakers today, she got shafted by the left-wing media, saying that, oh my gosh, well, it looks like Ivanka can't do anything right. Can she? How sad is that? Okay. Apparently, we're not going to be having Dan come in for some reason that I am ill-equipped to determine. The phone, I swear to God, I called myself before the show to find out if the system was working, and the system was working. So apparently there's one button somewhere that I either need to push or didn't push. In any event, Dan is in chat, Mary is in chat, I see Mike is in chat. I thank all of you for being there. And in lieu of this, I'm sure this has gone viral. But isn't this what a ton of people were thinking and wondering up until now? Why is it that we haven't heard anything like this? Well, CNN did today, and CNN happened to get quite the earful when they were attempting to interview people that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey today.
How that was 4 feet of water to go get them food on the first day. Yeah, that's a lot of shit. But y'all sit here, y'all trying to interview people during their worst times. Like, that's not the smartest thing to do. Like, people are really breaking down, and y'all sitting here with cameras and microphones trying to ask us what the fuck is wrong with us.
Haven't you always wondered yourself, why is it that we've never seen someone do that on live TV? The corollary is, what would you do? Or what would you think if there was someone from some cable network shoving a microphone in your face during one of the worst times you've ever encountered?
So I'm so and you're really trying to understand it with the microphone still in my face, with me shivering cold, with my kids wet,
and he moves the microphone away. Then what does he do? Moves the microphone right back.
Still putting the microphone in my face.
Sorry. Rosa Flores, it sounds like...
I have always wondered why that's never happened before. And of course, something like that has gone absolutely viral over the internet. As far as I'm concerned, it needs to. And let's be honest, it's not just CNN. I'm just picking on CNN because they happen to have the great soundbite. But if it had been somebody from Fox and they'd been excoriated on Fox, and I watched some of this on Fox News, and one of the first things I kept thinking is, my God, these people are so incredibly tolerant of these press journalist, pseudo-journalista fucktards who at one of the worst points of their life, keep sticking cameras and microphones in their faces. I will be frank, I would not possess that quality in and of myself at all. And then the governor, Texas governor, happened to weigh in on this. And he made a comment that I think is quite interesting, and one that leftists sure as hell didn't want to hear this at all.
Our fellow Texans, and especially people of Corpus Christi, for giving the president such a warm welcome on his ride over here, showing the gratitude that we all
This is Governor Greg Abbott, by the way, Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Have for the president. I want to express my deep gratitude to the president for him and his entire cabinet and staff for what they have done over the past couple of weeks. A lot of people.
Do you remember just a few days ago, even before this hit land, already people on the left were saying that Trump, this will be such a terribly abject, an abject fail for President Trump. He will not be able to handle this, even before this thing made landfall, because they wanted it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. People want to see Americans hurt or killed to enable their philosophy. And again, tonight, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail.
People see what happens in front of the camera. I want to reveal in just 1 minute what's been going on behind the scenes, behind the camera for the past 2 weeks. About 10 days in advance of the hurricane even coming in to the Corpus Christi area, members of the president's cabinet and the president himself were in contact with me and my office pre-preparing.
2 weeks before the hurricane hit, this president and his cabinet were already coordinating with the governor of Texas. Well, that's an abject fail, isn't it? Well, yes, if you're a leftist, it is. And what does that prove? There was preparation. Someone saw this coming.
For this catastrophe that was coming our way. At every step of the way as the hurricane came across the shore, as the flooding began in Houston, Texas, the president and his cabinet remain in constant contact with me and my staff. And they all had one thing to say. Texas, what do you need? How can we help? You can count on us. What I've learned is we can count on the President of the United States and his staff for helping Texas.
Oh, that's not what the media wants to hear. That's not what leftists want to hear at all.
Texas has been tested, but our response to this challenge has been made much more effective because of the very effective way the president and his staff has helped Texas respond to this challenge. So, Mr. President, thank you. Welcome to Texas.
So the governor shakes the hand of President Donald Trump, who happens to be sitting right next to him during this. I see this was covered by Fox News. I also see that it was abjectly uncovered by a lot of other folks. Here's another. This is where we've gotten today in the media, and I'm going to rip a new arsehole all night with regard to the media, the leftist media. And I'm going to rip a new arsehole tonight with regard to Antifa and leftist elements. But I came across this one particular article from, of all places, MarketWatch.com. And here's the headline. Ponder this, that this now is a headline, a startling headline today. ABC reporter Tom Lamas slammed as a snitch for calling police on Houston looters. Now, that's an article. That's a headline from an actual article on the internet today. Tom Lamas is not the hero Houston needs right now, according to how some of his dispatches were received on Tuesday morning. The ABC News reporter, using the breaking hashtag, told his followers that he saw looting taking place at a supermarket in the northeast part of the city, an area grappling with catastrophic floods and supply shortages. Stop. Would it not make sense to you that in times of crisis, there are going to be folks that are going to take advantage of these terrible crises, i.e. looters? Would it not be logical to conclude that at a scene of a catastrophe such as this, you're going to have looters, and they're going to take advantage of, say, in this instance, trying to loot a supermarket? And the answer, obviously, if you're thinking, walking, vertical human biped, the answer, obviously, is yes. And that there was a dead body nearby. He was immediately met with a heavy dose of internet what the hell. This is his tweet. We're witnessing looting right now at a large supermarket in the northeast part of Houston, and police have just discovered a dead body. Okay. And so what's wrong with that? Of course, somebody replies to the tweet, so in your breaking announcement, hungry folks looting food, a.k.a. survival, takes precedence over the discovery of a body. Okay, there we go. We've just politicized everything. Absolutely everything. But you note in the tweet, he said police were already present and that they were looking and had found a body. And then, I guess because whoever owns that store, it's likely a huge corporation, a massive corporation, who can afford to let anyone and everyone go in and strip it bare. But was that the case here? Funny thing is, I did a little bit of looking into this. No, that's not the case. To me, it didn't say Kroger's or Bel Air or Albertsons or Save Mart or Rayleigh's or Walmart. It was a smaller mom-and-pop business. Oh, wait. Their job, also according to leftists, is to let people go into their store and take anything and everything they want for free. Because, after all, this is the United States of America, and that's what people want. That's what people deserve. The backlash, though, the story continues. The backlash didn't stop llamas from following up with a now-deleted image from the crime scene where authorities were called into action. No families struggling for a bag of soggy Wonder Bread on Lamas's watch. That's how his hundreds of detractors on Twitter saw it. And that's where the whole thing really went off the rail. Somebody wrote, not to mention you've taken Coast Guard and police away from helping people. Oh, of course, there's that, too. So, looters, note to looters, you can do anything you want. If you receive, and who knows, this could have been pressure from you on social media. And this reporter is now a snitch. Another one, stopping rescues to sustain starvation. Quality work. So you found a body, but you called the cops on hungry people. Should they order from Amazon? So in times of crisis, looting, who gives a fuck? Your store, do you think that might be a little bit different? That you might have a bit of an investment in this time because it would seem that your store is also getting flooded. But that's okay. Because trust me, if they're looting a supermarket, those self-same folks are probably going to homes and apartments in the area and doing the loving same thing. That's called doing the logical extension. But this reporter's a snitch for calling the police about that. Finally, he came back to tweet his case. Let me clear this up. We were with police who had discovered a dead body and mentioned we saw people with faces covered, going into a supermarket nearby. But Twitter, of course, they weren't having any of it. So that Tom Lamas guy was a bad guy. A bad man. That's the state of the art today, so to speak. Art, I use that in air quotes lovingly. of journalism today. I'm actually very surprised that someone, and maybe somewhere in that chain, I just didn't happen to see it, that someone should have said, you know, your job is just to report. Your job is not to intervene in any way whatsoever. So that person that just got shot and may be dripping blood, just look away. Just keep the cameras rolling. Keep the microphones on. And just watch and observe and see what's occurring. We got about another 3 more minutes or so before the first bottom of the hour break. I am really tragically sorry that Dan Butcher couldn't call in. Dan, I'm sure, had some really... I'll wager he had some stories of some terrible grief, some abject tragedy. And I'll wager he also had some stories of valor and people doing a lot of the right thing. So that's what we've lost in too many parts of America, doing the right thing and expecting others to do the right thing and expecting that in times like these, why is it that if you're a logical thinking human being and you happen to live on the coast where you know you're frequently struck with hurricanes, oh, but stop. I have to mention this in the few minutes that we have before the break. As I said earlier, people are pointing at President Trump and they're saying, Trump, you know, this is all because of climate change and global warming, and the United States is responsible. And by the way, Trump, you are directly responsible for this. There's a little bit of a problem with that. The last hurricane was 12 years ago. Oh, wait, whose presidency was that? And under whose presidency did we not have any hurricanes? But funny, no one mentioned that at all. Now that a hurricane comes in, makes landfall, 12 years later, in 2017, in August, now it's President Trump's fault. Had this been a Democrat, had it been, let's say, Hillary Rodham Clinton, do you think this would have been an issue at all? The answer, of course, is no, it would not have at all. But it's an issue now because, as everyone knows, Donald Trump, in league with Satan, made sure that the hurricane came in. Those are facts and evidence. And the other thing is, despite what Governor Abbott may say, there was no preparation whatsoever or linkage or coordination, and rightly not, with the state of Texas. Because there's no way that President Trump or any members of his cabinet could have done anything to mitigate this, because we all know President Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head, he hates everyone.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
You're listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon on the SHR Media Network. And we are live on Spreaker, live on YouTube. If you want to watch live, go to the SHR Media channel on YouTube, and you can see what's going on inside the studio live, even as I speak at this very moment. Again, apologies to you. I tried to get Dan Butcher in earlier. For whatever reason, the phone system was not working. And I hope that, I don't know, maybe I'll try to see if Dan can come back on Thursday and talk to us about that. So I'm going to try to rearrange things around and do some little scheduling changes. Because, again, as I said before the break, I bet Dan has some incredible stories, absolute incredible stories about the challenges that are occurring. Because, of course, Dan lives in Texas, and he's not all that terribly far from the tragedy that's going on. 50 inches of rain. How do you battle that? And as I said earlier in the first segment, my understanding is that Hurricane Harvey is moving east. My sister-in-law and her husband, who just they just of all things bought a church there at Baton Rouge. Bad French. And who knows whether they're going to get hit. They said it was raining. I just hope that it doesn't dump on them and do to them what the poor people in Texas have had happen to them. Well, that's not it. Of course, there's lots of other things that have occurred as well. One of them was, and this was a striking example. I won't say perfect because I don't want perfection, the word perfection, to be linked with this in any fashion, but it is an example of what happens to the relations between various countries when you see evil and you decide actively not to combat it or do anything about it. You just set it on ignore mode for 8 years. And that's what we're seeing now, the results of Barack Hussein Obama having done precisely that, leading from the rear and tactical patience, meaning I'm not going to do and have not done a damn thing. Oh, except this, I'll ship billions of dollars to Iran, knowing full well that though I'm trying to make sure they don't become nuclearized, that everyone knows they're going to do it again anyway. They will do it. they will do it. So the bad actors, after 8 years, are finally starting to realize, well, is this a paper tiger or not? What perfect time now to challenge again. Russia was able to go into Ukraine, absolutely unopposed. No problem. Go ahead and do it. Obama pointed his finger. Luckily, he didn't mention anything about a red line, drawing a line in the sand. So this is what you get. You get North Korea acting up. You get China acting up. You get Russia acting up. You get China building islands in the ocean for tactical military purposes. And we do nothing. So it should not shock anyone. Here's the article from the New York Times. And this just happened. As North Korea fires missile over Japan, analysts see gains. So I'm guessing that because you are connected to the news, as I am, you already knew this happened. But what's the deal about gains? North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has authorized more than 80 missile tests since taking power almost 6 years ago, but all of those missiles landed in nearby waters because they were of limited range or fired at a sharp angle, high into space, so that they would splash down without going too far. On Tuesday, today, the North abandoned that restraint, lobbing an intermediate-range ballistic missile at a normal angle and sending it over the Japanese island of Hokkaido. I should imagine that numerous trousers were changed on the island of Japan because of this today. Into a spot in the Western Pacific almost 1,700 miles away. In doing so, Mr. Kim may have been trying to show that he can hit a faraway target for the first time, doing a more realistic test of the type of missile he threatened to use to strike near the American territory of Guam. Quote, by lobbing a missile over Japan, North Korea is showing that it was not an empty threat when it said it would launch missiles towards Guam, said Chang Yon-ken, a missile expert at Korea Aerospace University near Seoul. Very interesting. So what does this mean? If that is the natural next stage of the North's missile development program, the world may see more such tests. Because of North Korea's location squeezed between China and South Korea, with Japan to the east and southeast and Russia to the northeast, there's essentially no way the North can test missiles on such trajectories without flying over another nation. Stop. Question. Do you think this was a coincidence? I know the answer to that one. If the previous launchings were for testing technologies, this one was a realistic demonstration of an intermediate-range ballistic missile capability, Mr. Chang said. In this test, the North's missile actually flew at a realistic angle and trajectory. That's a point. That's a statement. President Trump said in a statement Tuesday, today, that North Korea had signaled its contempt for its neighbors, for all members of the United Nations, and for minimum standards of acceptable international behavior. There's more to the article, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Tactically, however, what are the implications of this? Now, I'll be on Sackhead's radio tomorrow, here at the SHR Media Network. Sackhead Clint, Sackhead Sean will be here. The Triumvirate will be back again. And I'm sure one of the things that we'll be discussing will be North Korea and the implications of shooting a missile directly over over Japan. The implication is this. Kim Jong-un has become emboldened. Now, this can go one of two ways. Historically, in the past, Korea has done things so that it is the recipient of largesse from either the United Nations or the United States, or people attempting to placate them and give them what they want. Because we all know, if you know anything about history and if you know anything about North Korea, at night, go to Google, I've said this before, look at a photograph of North Korea at night versus South Korea. In South Korea, the place is rampant with light. In North Korea, a few points. Just a few points. That tells you about the capabilities and the present state of North Korea as compared to South Korea, which is a technical and an industrial powerhouse nation, which North Korea has chosen not to be, because as far as they're concerned, these little chubby fuckers that they're portrayed, they're believed to be gods in Pyongyang. And your gods are starving you. The people in North Korea are literally shorter and lighter than the citizens of South Korea. The answer is obvious. It's because of the philosophy of the nation state of North Korea versus that of South Korea. So I've said they're doing this and historically have continued to do it because they want something. I'm not even so sure that's true anymore. Many people have attempted to make the case that Kim Jong-un can be reasoned with. That it's all a ploy to acquire something for his nation because for whatever reason, he can't or won't let his nation get what it needs. Food. Placing the people ahead of everything else. He wants to be a military power. Wanted to get nuclear weapons, is in the process of getting nuclear weapons, and is in the process of weaponizing every missile that he can lay his hands on. It's said that he has a sufficient amount of material for roughly 60 warheads. He's still testing. The biggest problem with a warhead is what goes up must come down. And it's a different kind of technology. Now you can detonate a nuclear weapon in an airburst, but it can't be miles and miles and miles away from the Earth if you actually want to do damage instead of just create an EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse. That creates another set of problems for the people who make and build missiles. You have to be able to craft them so that once they go up and they start to come down, as they enter the atmosphere, the warhead survives and doesn't detonate because of the terrible friction as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere. Well, it would appear that Mr. Kim, or real Kim, is in the process of solving this problem. What is it? You have to ask yourself, what is it that North Korea really wants? Is this a statement, more saber rattling, in this case ballistic missile rattling, that Mr. Kim just wants you to pay attention to him and start sending him some free shite? Because after all, China has said it's no longer purchasing coal from North Korea. That's a bit of a sanction from China. Well, what does he want? His people are already going through terrible hardships, while he just keeps expanding and expanding his gout because of the things that he consumes and what he drinks and eats. His gout keeps getting worse. Here's an interesting aspect, and I hadn't mentioned it until now, and I hadn't thought about it until now. But some people are saying that, when you have gout, one of the things that you take to remedy that are steroids. And we know about steroids that when they're injectables or consumables, but particularly easily so when they're injectables, that people tend to become more volatile because testosterone goes up, etc. Look at bodybuilders, people that take steroids to perform better in athletics, etc. But it can make you go to the ragged edge. And some people are even going so far as to theorize that because of all the steroids that Kim Jong-un is taking to combat his damn gout, that it's making him even more testy than he was before. So you have to ask yourself, I happen to know this answer. Has this happened any time before in history where, for whatever reason, ruling individuals or groups have been affected by the environment, by what's being done to them. You want to hear something weird? Of course you want to hear something weird. That's why you listen to me and watch me. It's happened before in Rome. One of the theories is that the Roman dictators, the people in power in Rome again and again, were so damn nuts is because they had sanitary conditions. They had piped water. They had learned how to master and harness the distribution of water throughout Rome. That water went through pipes. These were pipes of lead. Check that out on your favorite search engine as well. So again, just another little wacky variable into the mix. Is it such that Kim Jong-un only wants the world to pay attention to him because he's beginning to throw missiles around and that he doesn't really want to hurt anyone? All he wants is the attention sufficient to be placated with, I don't know, perhaps more food, technology, assistance of some sort, agreements, sitting down in negotiations. But you and I both know Kim Jong-un will sit down with no one. And the people of Korea continue to believe that he is a god, sitting as he does, historically, through his family, for many years. So what does he want? What does he really want? Is he sufficiently daft that one of these days he really will throw a missile and it will strike a country? Or he will inject nothing more than just a warhead with a dirty bomb in it because he hasn't quite grasped the technology sufficient to ensure that there's a true detonation. Maybe he's just going to stick fissile materials into the warhead, into the nose of that particular missile. And you have to ask yourself this question too. Are we, as the United States, as the neighboring countries around the Korean Peninsula, are we, they, to the point where, well and truly, something does in fact need to be done? Could Japan, for example, and they are already planning for this, could Japan lawfully make a cogent and credible argument that because of the continuing threats, they must make a first strike? In terms of international law, I believe they could make an excellent argument. And the argument would not be made in terms of just recently, just the missile, that one missile thrown directly over Hokkaido. It would be going on for years and years and years. Why is he aiming at Japan? What is Japan? Japan over the years has said that they're not terribly pleased with the fact that the United States has a number of military elements on bases, American bases there, and ports. So whatever essential first responders would be to an incident in North Korea by the United States would be coming from Japan. So then it's an if-then. It's got to the point now it's going to be an if-then equation. If you think that you're going to be struck sometime, as I believe Kim Jong-un believes, like any dictator, Saddam Hussein, he never sleeps in the same place twice at night and wants to be completely unpredictable. And he believes he's being targeted, and he's on damn drugs. Is it beyond human ken to think that he, in fact, would make a first strike? And again, people are going to step back and say, oh, BZ, no, that can't be. He's a logical thinking human being and must know that if he strikes a country, or the United States, or Guam, as he's overtly threatened, or Japan, Doesn't he realize that he would be obliterated? I'm not convinced. So the big question is, who will we sacrifice? Who are we going to sacrifice? Folks, in the United States, do you want to sacrifice Los Angeles because it's on the West Coast and it happens to be within range and closer? Do you want to sacrifice Tokyo? Do you want to sacrifice northern Japan, southern Japan, east, west? It's a protectorate. Do you want to sacrifice Guam in order to keep missiles from raining on American heads? Who do you sacrifice first? How long do you allow him to do this? Because the longer you allow him, what we know about any bully, and leftists seem to think, oh, well, no, that just doesn't apply. People don't think that way. Oh, fuck you. Yes, they do. Some people are bullies, plain and simple, who have been given an arseload of power. When and where do you draw the line? The recent military activity in concert with South Korea and United States warships and military elements was made to send a message. But you have to again ask yourself, is Kim Jong-un listening? Can he be reasoned with? I submit two things. Number one, no, he cannot be reasoned with. Number two, he's not interested in listening. He's being treated like a god and expects everyone about him to treat him like a god. Number three, as far as he's concerned, he's being oppressed. He's the one that's under the gun. Everyone is against him, which is why he has a closed society. Many people in North Korea are living in buildings and edifices that don't even have a clean sheet of glass, absent defects and warps. I've seen the photographs. I've read the stories. So what do you do with Kim Jong-un? Knowing full well... Oh, here's another thing that we're going to throw into the mix. I see I have about 6 minutes left before the top of the hour. After the top of the hour, we're done with North Korea because I have too many other things to talk about. So what do you do with Kim Jong-un? Do you just let him go on and embolden him by doing that? Because that's what happens with bullies. Or do you intercede, knowing full well that if he detects incoming missiles, aircraft that actually fly into North Korean airspace, that likely he's going to launch. Now, what will he launch? I submit that he'll do two things simultaneously, that his military is already planned to do this. All along the DMZ, from north and south, on the north side, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of artillery pieces pointed south. And many thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers, North Korean soldiers, near that line. If that occurs, he's going to launch thousands and thousands of tons of projectiles from these artillery pieces as far as he can, and likely into Seoul, in an attempt to obliterate Seoul, the capital of South Korea. Simultaneously, he's probably also going to throw some missiles at a country. He might decide, or we may not know, that he's acquired the technology sufficient to, say, throw them at 3 countries at once. Launch something east towards LA, Seattle. Launch something south towards Japan, and maybe a little bit further at Guam, all at once. And then, for whatever reason, we see a massive device ignited, cooked off in Pyongyang. After that, who decides to get involved? I don't think, as I said before, I don't think Russia is much going to get involved, but my God, I don't see China as not becoming involved. Here's what you may not know. China and Russia are these days themselves, they are not the economic powerhouses that they were, say, 10 years ago. Because of the oil glut and the fact that the United States has become much stronger and independent in terms of oil and petroleum, which is why Hurricane Harvey is going to wreak havoc on the chemical coast. Russia has become less strong because they've built much of their economy around petroleum, Gazprom. They still ship an arseload down, and over to Europe. China also is not the economic powerhouse it once was. This accounts for, by the way, because it's all inexorably linked, this accounts for Putin making forays into countries, because when you have an economy, and this is true of China, when you have an economy that's starting to fail, when you've had a stronger economy before, and people may still think that you're very strong in terms of your economy, you create diversions for your people. In terms of Russia, that's Ukraine. In terms of Russia, that's saber rattling, etc. In terms of China, that's building an island. In terms of China, that's deciding that you're going to ship money into third world countries to get people to believe that now you are the source of largesse throughout the world, and that's where you get your power instead of the United States. All these things must be considered, but I am convinced of this. Now that we know that North Korea has no problem whatsoever with throwing a missile directly over Japan, I suspect and I believe that this is not going to tone down. Sooner or later, there's going to have to be an action. Now, whether that action consists of lighting up the next missile that he sends up and blowing it out of the sky, or whether it takes targeting a North Korean satellite or two and blowing them out of the universe, out of space, something's going to need to be done. Got about one more minute before the top of the hour break. 9 o'clock on the left coast, midnight the witching hour on the right coast. Just a minute away. Here's an article from the Daily Mail in the UK. Vladimir Putin orders 1,500 Russians to move away from North Korean border after Kim Jong-un's latest missile launch. And again, I say, did you see this in American media? No, you did not. That's why I look to other media sources. Vladimir Putin ordered 1,500 citizens to leave the area on North Korea's border. Russia and the Hermit State share a 24-mile-long international frontier by a river. The Russian Ministry of Emergencies warned citizens to leave the area. Dictator Kim Jong-un ordered a missile fired over Japan in a provocative move. In a surprise move, instructed civil defense officials, Russia said that they must shift residents to safe areas in the country's far east, according to pro-Kremlin media outlets. A verbal order was given to relocate 1,500 people to safe areas, said Russian security services. Again, it's coming, folks. Don't think it isn't. Don't know what form, but we can't continue to have strategic patience and leading from the rear. It's not working.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon here on the SHR Media Network. Today is Tuesday, the year of our Lord, August 29th, 2017. Unfortunately, we were not able to make contact with Dan Butcher. There was a phone problem. We spoke instead a little bit about the problems that are occurring in Texas, and that perhaps they may be on their way right now to smack Louisiana big time. And I wouldn't be surprised because that's the last thing that I heard. We also spoke about North Korea and some of the craziness that's going there. I have an hour left. And in that hour, I'm going to point my finger at leftists. And also the people that happen to support leftists. Because, quite frankly, in my opinion, Antifa, journalists, city administrators, government bureaucrats, and police are removing your constitutional rights here in America. And I've had enough. I am particularly disgusted, and I've said this before, no shock, but it continues to happen. I am particularly and most pointedly disgusted by the continuing insertion of police departments as obstructionists themselves to our civil rights, our constitutional rights, namely our First Amendment rights of free speech and peaceful protest. And I said that and will continue to say, peaceful protest. What do you have when you don't have peaceful protest? Well, that would be Antifa. And no one is making the very distinct link between, on the left, sometimes I am staggered of where we are in this country, but I have to get back on track. Police departments, police administrations cannot afford to forget that leftists and Antifa and many journalists and the American media maggots despise law enforcement and oppose law enforcement. When you stand back, you as law enforcement, when you stand back You are at cross purposes with yourselves and the oaths that you took to protect life and property. Because something like this, unfortunately, is becoming way too common.
This is nothing new, and we're seeing it on the streets. And, I remind folks of this. Those police officers, they have to be there in the middle of both groups. They have to be there while folks are around them protesting them. Our police officers have been disrespected, unfortunately, for 8 years. I think that's changing.
By the way, this is Tommy Lauren speaking on Fox.
With the new man in the White House. But we're seeing this overflow onto the streets, and it's a normalization, really, by the left of police hatred. And there is a war on cops. It's very real, and it's very dangerous. Why is the left not exposing that hate speech?
Tommy, perhaps it's changing. We hope it changes. Certainly, we have seen an administration that is more supportive by far of our police forces than we saw in the last 8 years. But in terms of how people on the streets feel, do you think, an element of supreme organization to all of this, designed to basically tear our country in two right now in a way that is destructive and unhealthy?
In a word, yes. I can't make it any more plaintively true than that. In one word, yes, I believe that's the point of leftists right now. I can call them Antifa, but they're anarchists, absolute anarchists. Period.
Well, absolutely. And we're seeing it not only by the mainstream media, but of course in Hollywood as well, and in entertainment. When you have icons like Beyonce and Colin Kaepernick speaking out regularly against police and demonstrating against police officers, that message has been set forth on social media, in the entertainment world, in pop culture, and then the mainstream media spreads it, and then all of a sudden police officers walking the streets doing their jobs, they feel that resentment, they feel that hate for simply doing their jobs. It's so disgusting to me, and many of my friends are police officers. They feel it in Dallas. They feel it around the country. They come to me. They express it to me. And the sad part is they can't say anything about it.
Right. No, they can't. Not at all. I sure as fuck can, because I owe nothing to anyone anymore. I'm retired. I can give the flying fickle finger of fate to my department and to many law enforcement administrators, particularly those in Berkeley, particularly those in Charlottesville, particularly those in leftist-run cities all around the country.
But I can.
Tommy, if what you and Trish just said is the case, what is the end goal here? Do they want no society? Do they want the American experiment to end? What are they?
In my opinion, again, in a word, yes. Some of them want that precisely because many of them are young and stupid and will buy leftist bullshit. Why do I know this? When I was younger, I bought leftist bullshit.
They want.
Well, I think any time that maintaining control of the streets and maintaining law and order is seen as oppression or racial oppression, you have a big problem. And I think that might be the goal. Lawlessness. It might be let people do what they want, let folks do what they want, because police officers have become, in some areas, this symbol of oppression, which is so wrong because they are the very ones that are going to protect everyone in communities, especially in the inner cities. They are the protection. So why this rhetoric has turned to make them the enemy, that's destructive not only for police officers, but for the very communities that they protect.
Very true. What do we know about Chicago, for example? There was a push in Chicago, the likes of which I spoke about earlier on this show a week or two ago, to defund the Chicago Police Department. And now, after this amount of time, all I have to say in response is, bring it on. Bring it on. You want to defund Chicago PD? Chicago, City of Chicago, and State of Illinois, you go right ahead.
And I don't know what the end goal is, but I would really caution folks to think about it, because who's going to be there to protect them if all the police officers go away, if all the police officers stop being proactive?
Let me tell you who will be left. People with guns. Let that sink in for a moment.
There to protect them.
Yeah, when your house gets robbed, call a protester. So you've got police subjected to taunts in Dallas. In Houston, you've got a Christopher Columbus statue bathed in red paint, with protesters demanding that Christopher Columbus now be wiped from our history. What in the heck is going on?
Let me tell you, let me point out the obvious. Let me be Captain Obvious just for a moment. 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Do you remember when, by all means necessary, elements of Antifa, various other leftist groups were protesting right adjacent and under the very statues that now they're insisting be taken down? Isn't that odd? Well, you have to ask yourself, why not then? Why just now? The obvious answer is because they just fucking thought of it now.
Well, where does it end? And I think the sad part about this is less about actually making a political statement and more about getting attention. You do something like this, you do something radical, then all of a sudden you're a star on social media, you're a star on the internet, and then we talk about them endlessly. So these people that are doing this, that are destructive, we should take it for what it is. Maybe we should stop glorifying. Maybe we should stop exposing them, because that is what they want. They want to be on the news. They want us to be talking about them.
And they want to bring down the right, and they want to bring down Donald Trump, and they want to bring down the GOP, Republicans, and conservatives, meaning you and me. What a shame it is, however, that quite a significant number of conservatives are themselves well-armed and independent and have been saving their money and doing the right thing for years and years and years. So let's also not forget that despite all of this attempted erasure of free speech and the First Amendment, let's also, and I'm going to remind you, that SCOTUS recently happened to rule on free speech and so-called specific hate speech. I wrote about that back on July 13th. SCOTUS ruled on the First Amendment. The U.S. Supreme Court just recently released a terribly important opinion on the First Amendment case. And unfortunately, at the time, with all the stuff that was going on, I just didn't have occasion to repeat it. But now is a perfect time to do so. Here's a headline from the WashingtonPost.com. Supreme Court unanimously reaffirms there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. From today's opinion by Justice Samuel Alito for 4 justices in Mattal versus Tam, the Slants case. The idea that the government may restrict speech expressing ideas that offend strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. Speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar background is hateful. But the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought that we hate. Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote separately, also did 4 justices, but on the point the opinions agreed. A law found to discriminate based on viewpoint is an egregious form of content discrimination, which is presumptively unconstitutional. A law that can be directed against speech found offensive to some portion of the public can be turned against minority and dissenting views to the detriment of all. The First Amendment does not entrust that power to the government's benevolence. Instead, our reliance must be on the substantial safeguards of free and open discussion in a democratic society. Period. End of statement. And this flies directly in the fact of what leftists, Democrats, the American media maggots, globalists, and sadly, even a few Republicans are saying that there is hate speech, and it is a crime. Let me respond. One word: false. So says the U.S. Supreme Court in a July ruling. False. Leftists, however, predicate their little whiny bleats about so-called hate speech, but upon feelings and emotions, not about facts or reality. And I wrote this next portion on July 31st of this year. That as far as leftists are concerned, speech is brutality. Let that sink in for a moment. As long as it fails to correspond to their version and values attached to speech, any speech, all speech, except their speech. And to think that at one time we actually really, truly, well and truly did have a First Amendment. Stop. Do you realize that the United States is the only major Western country that does not have an official and onerous hate speech criminal law on its books. Well, we know Canada certainly does to our north. Clear. Thank you, Justin Trudeau, and you various Quebec leftists. Everyone can sleep well at night. In Canada, can they not? In my mind, that tells me just much more about those other countries than it does about the United States. But isn't some speech the equivalent of brutality? Can't a lot of speech be the equivalent of brutality? There's a leftist psychology professor by the name of Lisa Feldman Barrett who wrote an article that said, "When is speech violence?" And it goes like this. Imagine that a bully threatens to punch you in the face. A week later, he walks up to you and breaks your nose with his fist. Which is more harmful, the punch or the threat? The answer might seem obvious. Physical violence is physically damaging. Verbal statements aren't. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names will never hurt us. The scientifically speaking, however, it's not that simple. Stop. You see where she's going already, do you not? Because I have a wonderful Tucker Carlson spot that I'm going to play in just a minute or so, emphasizing this because I want you to hear this professor and what she believes in her own words. Scientifically speaking, it's not that simple. Words can have a powerful effect on your nervous system. Certain types of adversity, even those involving no physical contact, can make you sick, alter your brain, even kill neurons, and shorten your life. Wait, so can eggs. Cow farts. A blue-ringed octopus, that can shorten your life. Loose lug nuts, very bad. The cargo door could fall from a 747 from the sky and kill you dead. A bee, bad spinach. If words can cause stress, she writes, and if prolonged stress can cause physical harm, then it seems that speech, at least certain types of speech, can be a form of violence. Abject violence. Well, that's
Lisa
the point she's trying to make.
Is a psychology professor at Northeastern University. In a recent piece for the New York Times entitled "When is Speech Violence?" she argues in defense of banning speeches by figures like Milo Yiannopoulos, calling him a provocateur and hate monger and saying there is, quote, nothing to be gained from debating him. But she doesn't stop there. She says her anti-speech posture is based in science and that scientifically speaking, some speech literally is as harmful as physical violence.
What do we know about science? Science is always correct because if you can get a sufficient number of scientists to cast a vote on something, you know that science is immured in stone. Global warming, anyone? Yes.
Lisa Feldman Barrett joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on your show.
So if certain speech is tantamount to violence, obviously we need to ban it. Violence is harmful to people. Who decides under your plan what speech is allowed and which is banned?
Yes. That's the crux of the biscuit. Immediately, Tucker Carlson comes out with it because this is the same question I've been asking for years. Which board? There's got to be a lovely board with people sitting down at a table, a nice eben table with nice, shiny, smooth marble, sipping espressos and deciding, well, we are going to be the final arbiters of what is considered to be hate speech, yes?
Well, Tucker, first I have to point out the fact that I actually didn't advocate or in any way argue for banning anybody. I didn't argue for censorship. And in fact, the article wasn't even really about free speech. It was about two things, okay?
Stop right there. She cannot see or is purposely lying to Tucker Carlson. In any event, she's ridiculously moronic and stupid if she can't see that this is what it's leading to, or she's plotting, so coldly, calculatedly plotting against the citizens of the United States and the First Amendment and our rights. It's one or the other. It has to be one or the other.
The first thing that it was about was choosing speakers. Some speakers invite debate. And as I said in my article, debate.
Now, she's couching this in terms of speakers at universities, but that's not the point. That's not the leftist point. Start small, go big, and pretty soon it encompasses everything. This is calculated beyond measure. You know it, and I know it.
It is the lifeblood of democracy. It's really important. So it's important to invite people who will initiate discussion and debate around provocative, controversial, and even offensive ideas, and particularly on college campuses, because debate opens minds. But hateful speech closes minds, so just don't invite those people. And the second point that I made
okay, wait, can we just do one?
No, let me finish, because it's really important. Okay. It's important to make the point, right?
Okay, but I just want to address them one.
Speech closes minds.
Point at a time. Okay.
No, the second point that I made is that at this particular moment in time, hateful speech is particularly problematic because we live in a culture that is full of casual brutality.
It's particularly important at this time because leftists see a fucking opportunity, and the opportunity is this: never let a good crisis go to waste. It's the perfect time to push even harder, they say.
That people say horrible things to each other on social media. Bullying is rampant in schools, and now we even have
Oh, I guess I never got bullied. I never watched other kids get bullied. Hello, rite of passage, anyone?
Politicians who just lob the
Learning how to deal with fucktards, anyone?
Bomb at one another. And this kind of verbal aggression, if it goes on for long enough, is harmful to your nervous system. It makes people more likely to be sick.
I'm going to sneak a question in here.
Yeah.
I got it. So, obviously, this is a pretext for censorship.
Yes. Oh, but she's going to argue against that. Oh, no, that's not what I mean. Listen.
My question remains the same.
She laughs at that. That's so funny. Yeah, that's what she wants.
Which is, who decides what speech can be heard? You're arguing against allowing all speech to be heard because some of it you don't classify as debate, but instead as hate speech. My question is, who gets to make that decision? It's a subjective decision. And who's empowered to make it? You?
Yeah. No, not at all. And
I love it. What she really thinks came out first. Yep. For a microsecond, she was honest. For a microsecond, she told you what she really thought, then had to stop, regroup, and say, oh, no. That's. Folks, let me tell you about Milo. I played one of his cuts 3 or 4 months ago. Milo addressing a college, a speech at a college. And they say, oh, we can't have Milo because he's not a debater. Oh, really? Then put someone up in front of him who can truly debate Milo and do it with facts. And the reason they don't like Milo is because he has facts and he's much smarter and quicker on his feet than all of the other people that have gone to see him, because he invites people to come up and then he destroys them.
In fact, there are 2 parts
with facts
that I want to address in what you just said. The first is that I'm not talking about censorship. I'm talking about who to invite. For example, you run a television show. You have to make decisions about who you invite and who you don't. Are you telling?
That's odd. Let me ponder this. Is Fox News publicly subsidized? No, I don't think they are. Are most colleges and universities publicly subsidized? Oh, I think they are.
Telling me that all the people that you choose not to invite, you're censoring those people?
No, what I'm saying is that if I take you out of one...
And leftists at this point are going, oh, that's a great argument. What a great argument she just made.
...classification and move you into another, it's an effort to silence you. If I were to say your ideas are so stupid... Hold on. If I were to say your ideas are so stupid they're not really ideas, therefore we don't have to listen to them or debate you, what I'm doing is trying to silence you. I'm trying to put you outside of the pale.
And who does Tucker Carlson have on his show every night, topic after topic after topic? Leftists on his show. Why does he do it? Because the finest example of leftism is to let them speak in front of a camera, because they can be frequently their own worst enemies and people can see and hear and judge what these people are really about.
And that's exactly what you're doing. You're making a case for censorship, as you know, but you're too disingenuous to admit it. But my question remains the same, which is who gets to make that determination? Who decides what's hate and what's debate? Who makes that call?
Well,
it's simple.
I will answer your question about who gets to decide in a second, but I first want to address the point that you just made. I think that it's, people start to call each other names when they think they can't win a debate on the basis of the strength of their arguments. Debate is...
And on whose behalf does that occur? Oh, that's right. Leftists.
The lifeblood of democracy, as I said.
Who in spam on, I look at all of my spam, which mostly consists on my blog of F and S words and obes and ists. That's all they've got.
In my op-ed. Yes. And debate means that you have to foster an opportunity for people to actually express their views. So,
really, is that the nature of the state of the art on campuses across the fruited plain in the United Snakes of America these days? Is that the nature of what we're seeing? No, it's not.
When I tell you that censorship is different from choosing to invite, when I make the point that, free speech gives you the right to say offensive things, but it doesn't.
And again, she's not going to mention the difference because it does not buttress her argument between public entities and private entities.
It doesn't necessarily give you the you shouldn't expect the right to be invited everywhere.
And I am disagreeing
and when I tell you,
and you're trying to overtalk me here.
Well, it's not debate when you tell me.
But you're watching debate happen and you don't like it. I'm waiting for you to call me.
No, actually, I was
a practitioner of hate speech.
No, not at all. But lobbing insults at people, isn't debate.
I'm soliciting an answer from you. I keep asking you the same question, which is, how do we decide? What are the standards? Who gets to make that call? What's legitimate and what's not? And you can't answer the question.
I can answer the question. It's just you keep clouding it with insults.
Come on, Professor, just give me a real answer.
Yeah, the real answer is when a reasonable person is fearful for their own safety or the safety of someone else, that classifies as hateful speech.
How do you decide what a reasonable person is? Perhaps I feel intimidated. Hold on, maybe I feel intimidated by you right.
Who is, in her world, a reasonable person? Again, it gets down to striated politics and philosophy. As far as she is concerned, Tucker Carlson is not a reasonable person. Therefore, we are not going to place that discretion into his hands or persons like him. That's the answer. She will not state it.
Right now, I think I'm a reasonable person. Should we consign you to the hate speech bin? I mean, what does that even mean? These are totally subjective categories. That's why normal people, old-fashioned liberals, used to say, we let everybody talk. Right? Remember that?
Yeah. So, reasonable person is actually...
Yeah, move along, meaning these constitutional things, these documents created by, again, oppressive, evil, old slave owner men who all need to have their statues torn down, which is another reason we need to rip the Bill of Rights asunder and the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It all needs to go away right now. That's what she means. That's what leftists mean. That's their goal. This is purposeful. Come right back, please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads radio show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Holy crap, where did the evening go? It went again, boom, just like that. Although, this is the last segment. Holy moly. Well, it's the same thing I experience on the Sackheads radio show, which, by the way, is going to be on tomorrow night on the SHR Media Network. So you need to come back. You need to come back and listen to the Sackheads, because the triumvirate will be here tomorrow night. We were listening to Tucker Carlson, and he was talking to a leftist professor about free speech who says that, no, free speech is not under assault at all.
Concept in the U.S. law. It's a concept that's used by judges and lawyers and other legal actors to make legal decisions.
He's asking her who's going to decide what constitutes hate speech, and she says reasonable people. What she doesn't mean is, you, Tucker Carlson, you're reasonable. Therefore, I imbue you with that quality. Not happening.
30 seconds. Define what it means.
A reasonable person is the average person.
Average leftist is what she means. She doesn't mean people in Louisiana. She doesn't mean people in Texas. She doesn't mean people that are over the flyover states. She doesn't mean people in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, most of Nevada, most of the people who voted. She doesn't mean you. She means only people who happen to occupy leftist states in leftist counties and in leftist cities. That's exactly what she means.
The average, as defined by what? What does that mean, the average person?
The point is that we have,
you can't define it.
A public...
No, she can't define it. So it's time to move on in her brain.
We have a public health crisis, and in that context, it becomes really more important to choose to invite people who will...
Now she's talking about public health. Why? Because she can't answer the fucking question.
We'll discuss controversial and offensive topics. I actually said that in my op-ed. What I'm saying is, if you're going to make decisions about who to invite, pick the people who will
support you. Pick the people who will support you. Pick the people who will support you. Pick leftists. Pick those who enjoy Antifa. Pick people from Hollywood. Pick people from big cities. Pick Democrats. Pick leftists. Pick those who are obviously keeping with her thoughts and philosophies.
Engage in debate and avoid the people who won't. And there's an extra reason for doing that now, because
avoid the people who won't engage in debate. Milo invites people up at every speech. How can he do that when he can't speak?
I still am confused by what you're saying. I mean, how do we know?
It's a circular argument with a circular firing squad, and they want all the little people on the right to be at the end point of their verbal guns. And trust me, soon to be their literal guns. The left is arming itself. Arming itself.
Saying with respect, is there some views that I don't like? They're not real views. I don't have to take them seriously because I don't feel like engaging with them. So just like, shut up. Because I'm asking you to define your terms and you don't seem like you can.
I did define my terms.
Okay, so what is the average
It's a legal
person?
concept.
But which means what? You don't seem to understand what it means. How do you define it?
Are you telling me that you can't tell the difference between censorship and the difference between who to...
No, she won't answer the question. Again. She will not answer the question, is posing a question back at him because she does not have the mental fecundity to be able to craft a good answer for Tucker's question. Who decides?
To invite? Are you telling me?
I'm not saying that. I'm trying to get you to define a term that you introduced into the conversation. Reasonable person, average person. I'm asking you a simple question. What does that mean? You can't answer it. You're changing the subject. And I'm just saying, you're the one who wrote the New York Times op-ed, but you didn't bother to think this through with any precision.
Not changing. I'm not changing the subject.
Oh, no, it's happy. I'm not changing the subject.
I'm telling you that my op-ed was about one thing, and you seem persistent to try to make it about something else.
Because that's where you're going. Because we are not stupid. We can see what you're doing, where you're going, and how you're crafting all your little leftist arguments with your big brains that can think much more logically and see things oh so much clearly than the rabble, the proles, pieces of crap like me and you listening right now. My dearest readers, my dearest listeners, people listening live, people listening on the podcast, people listening in Spreaker, and watching on YouTube. You can all go to hell.
No, it's the core
question.
You
I'm
create
not
a straw man.
Anything.
I'm
asking you to define what you're talking about. I'm not one of the children sitting in your classes who nods in bovine agreement. I'm an adult who...
I kind of like that. I might steal that. Who nods in bovine agreement.
Man's an adult answer, and you don't have one.
I gave you an answer. I absolutely gave you an answer.
Okay, well, I could ask you for the fifth time what that actually means, but you don't seem to have an answer, which I think tells
I answered you. You just didn't like my answer. You didn't like my answer, and so...
No, here's the answer. Here's the answer, Professor. The Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decides. And what you don't like, and the reason you're going to push your agenda, is you don't like the fact that the Supreme Court recently ruled that there is no such animal as hate speech.
Instead, you just lob...
Let's laugh at leftists because it's what they deserve.
Insults.
I'm not
and I don't actually understand how that... I don't actually understand how that actually... promotes the kind of debate which fosters a democracy. I really don't.
Okay, because I don't think that you believe in debate. You don't want to hear ideas that you disagree with.
No, because
if I didn't believe in debate, I wouldn't be on your show.
You didn't do a very good job. With respect. Professor, thanks for joining us.
With respect.
Well, we let that go as long as we could and try and find out what makes a reasonable
you
person.
Didn't
We're still
do
unsure.
a very
if you're
good
a reasonable
job.
Person, call and tell us. We'll be right back.
That's glorious. That's why I love playing Tucker Carlson. That's why I love having that stuff on the show. You might even say that in the eyes of leftists, Democrats, Antifa, anarchists, because that's what they well and truly are, the next sentence from the article that she wrote is this. It perfectly encapsulates everything. And it's going to be fervently embossed by a quote that I'm going to give you from Howard Dean. Think of this sentence that I'm going to tell you right now. The idea of freedom of speech does not, I'm going to read this again. The idea of freedom of speech does not mean a blanket permission to say anything anybody thinks. Process that for a moment. They do not possess the capacity to understand the difference between words and actions. Howard Dean himself, a leftist, Democrat, wrote, "Hate speech is not protected by the First Amendment." And many leftists went, "Oh, yes, wonderful. Go Dean, go Howard, go boy, we like you. That's ever so true." This is nothing more than one of the most brain-dead statements I've ever heard, I've ever read. The writer and her little jejune sympathizers fail to properly load the difference between the words speech and action, just like I said. And they can't conceive in their little knurled, fissured, fetid little brain housing groups of that concept. Here's a tweet from Keith Olbermann yesterday, and it goes like this. "Fuck you at real Donald Trump. Nazi, Nazi, fuck Nazi, Nazi, racist in all caps, Nazi, bigot in all caps, go fuck yourself, fucking Nazi fuckers." That's from Keith Olbermann. That's called free speech. And I support Olbermann's right to write it. He utilized expletives. Was my psyche harmed? No, it wasn't. But he did not advocate outright violence against President Trump, as they say in today's vernacular. Olbermann is, in fact, insane, yes, but he has the same rights as Nazis to disagree about issues. And yes, I just said Nazis have the right to speech, just as does Keith Olbermann, whom I despise. But that's immaterial. He has that right. Leftists now believe that they can no longer even be questioned. And if they are, that in and of itself constitutes hate speech. Here's another quote from that article. "Free speech protections, not only, but especially in universities which aim to educate students in how to belong to various communities, should not mean that someone's humanity, their humanity, or their right to participate in political speech as political agents can be freely attacked, demeaned, or questioned." Questioning leftists is now hate speech. Put that, let that, jam that into your brain. That's where they want to go. That's where they're going. They want to make that common. Questioning people is now hate speech if you're not on the exact same side on every topic. Okay, with that background, God, I'm not going to get the time to do all of this. I just want to get through this one particular article. I may or may not go into overtime tonight just to get it out of my spleen. There's only two people. White Mamba came into chat. Mary Brockman is here. Mike went away. Everybody else went away. So in chat, we still have Mary Brockman, who's probably going to go away because it's getting way damn late, and she's over on the far left coast. White Mamba, good to see you. You, sir, out of Florida. So great to see you here. We're talking about free speech. And I am going to continue with this. With that background, so I had to do all of those things. I had to make all of those mentions and play that cut for you so that you can see where it is that I'm going, revolving around current events, particularly this past weekend. As background, the city of San Francisco decided to outright cancel this past Saturday's, that was August 26th, this past Saturday's rally organized by a group called Patriot Prayer. It's a group typified by most all the American media maggots as Nazi-like in nature and purely evil in intent. The American media maggots quantified it as a, quote, controversial free speech rally. Stop. You see? You see where this is going? Free speech is now labeled controversial. Stop again. What is the group Patriot Prayer anyway? Leftist-oriented Wikipedia actually writes of Patriot Prayer. Patriot Prayer is an American conservative advocacy group whose stated aim is to support free speech and the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The group is known for organizing rallies and protests in predominantly liberal areas. Some of the rallies have drawn controversy due to the attendance of white nationalists, though the group's founder, Joey Gibson, has disavowed them and denounced racism. By the way, I've researched, and he's done that time and again. Oh, wait, stop! Let's list the numerous ways, shall we, that Patriot Prayer, that group, is inherently evil, okay? So that we're talking on the same level. So you know where I'm going. Anything conservative is evil. Anything or anyone advocating conservatism is evil. Supporting free speech is evil. Supporting the First Amendment is evil. Supporting the U.S. Constitution is evil. Organizing rallies and protests in predominantly liberal areas is evil. Joey Gibson is evil for disavowing white nationalists and disavowing racism. You see? Rampant and unmitigated evil, which in the mind of leftists must be shut down immediately.
We must do something about this immediately. Harumph. I didn't get a harumph out of that guy. Give the governor harumph. You watch your ass.
And so shut down it was, right? Aided and abetted by the Berkeley Police Department. Here's a headline. Berkeley police allowed Antifa to jump barricades, assault demonstrators. Berkeley police deliberately allowed masked Antifa anarchists, because that's what they are, to jump a barricade and attack a demonstration by a peaceful right-wing group on Sunday, leading to 5 assaults, including on Patriot Prayer group leader Joey Gibson. And I just mentioned him, and I just mentioned his group, and what Wikipedia happens to think about it. For one time, they actually said what it was. The counter-demonstration had reportedly been largely peaceful until that point. Oh, imagine that. The police later defended. Listen to this. This is an official response. This is what corks me off 210 over 190. Trust me, this is what denigrates law enforcement, and it's sick and disgusting and despicable. The police later defended their decision by arguing that keeping the anarchists out would have led to greater violence. This is a quote, there was no need for a confrontation over a grass patch. Berkeley Police Chief Andrew Greenwood said, according to the San Jose Mercury News. Now, note how Berkeley PD Chief Greenwood inartfully and clumsily crafted his very biased response in terms of, quote, keeping the anarchists, at least he admits that's what they are and their nature, out, would have led to greater violence, thusly over a patch of grass. This is called a cowardly excuse for not doing his damn job. By the way, what is the city of Berkeley paying this chief to execute their city council's non-interventionist policy and that of its Antifa-embracing Mayor Aragon? Oh, that's right. They're paying this guy $210,000 a year, not including benefits. Oh, that pushes his salary and benefits to close to $300,000. So check this. This is a headline, because I want to remind you of it. Berkeley mayor is member of Antifa Facebook group that organized riots. Berkeley mayor Jesse Aragon is a member of the anti-fascist Facebook group By Any Means Necessary, closely aligned to Antifa, which orchestrated the riots that occurred ahead of a scheduled lecture by Milo Yiannopoulos much earlier this year, and left last year, as a matter of fact. Those are facts in evidence. So now you have a leftist-leaning, Antifa-loving, filleting mayor of the city of Berkeley in alignment with the chief of the Berkeley Police Department. I wrote at great length about that earlier when Berkeley pissed me off because of their despicable non-reaction, biased non-reaction. So the original No to Marxism protest had been denied a permit by the city, but a small group of protesters showed up anyway, as did 2,000, quote, largely peaceful counter-demonstrators, the Mercury News reported. SFGate.com reported that there were 400 police on hand to prevent violence. What do I say? What do you pat me on the back for saying? But wait, there's more. But Berkeley police stepped aside. The Mercury News reported. Stop. By the way, if you're not familiar, the Mercury News is a left-leaning publication of San Jose. That in and of itself should come as no shock to you whatsoever. But Berkeley police stepped aside, the Mercury News reported, when over 100 masked anarchists busted through police lines, avoiding security checks by officers to take away possible weapons. They avoided having their weapons taken? No. How could anyone have possibly foreseen that coming? The result was several severe beatings of those who had gathered to protest against Marxism. 13 of the anarchists were arrested, the Chronicle reported. Again, how many times do I have to point this out? In my opinion, I would submit that the city of Berkeley, Mayor Arreguin, the city council, and Chief Greenwood are all complicit in a conspiracy, 182 PC of the California Penal Code, to allow lawful citizens of the state of California and the United States to become injured by indifference, purposeful indifference, and to allow public and private property to be damaged and destroyed, having received their marching orders not to interfere if the forces of Antifa were having their way. And they were. And so I would go further. I would submit that those forces possess a history sufficient to instigate, in my opinion, both a federal RICO investigation of Antifa, of the entire Bay Area bureaucracy, but also a 42 U.S.C. 1983 deprivation of civil rights action. And I would submit, I would ask everyone who was injured at any of these riots under the auspices of leftist protected and censuring police to file lawsuits, just like anyone else would do, against these organizations, these city councils, these mayors, and the chiefs of police who demand and send out orders that their officers stand down, Charlottesville included. Stop. Who did I not mention? I didn't mention Boston PD. Why? Because Boston PD, when they had tons of people, they did their job and they kept the lid on everyone, and that's what their job is to do. Blessings to Boston PD. They're still a real law enforcement organization. What's a 1983 action? Listen to this, and you tell me, reasonable person, just like the professor said, a reasonable person, I'm going to expect that you're reasonable. You tell me if you think that 42 U.S.C. 1983, this statute which I'm going to read to you, is applicable. Because in my opinion, it certainly is. This is it, verbatim. Every person who, under color of statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state or territory or the District of Columbia subjects or causes to be subjected any citizen of the United States or other person within the jurisdiction thereof to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws shall be liable to the party injured in an action at law, suit in equity, or other proper proceeding for redress, except that in any action brought against a judicial officer for an act and omission taken in such officer's judicial capacity, not law enforcement, injunctive relief shall not be granted unless a declaratory decree was violated, etc., etc., etc. Now stop. Do you think that applies to law enforcement, to mayors, to city councils, to chiefs of police, who actively conspire to make these decisions to allow citizens of the United States to clash and become injured, and therefore purposefully, in my opinion, allowing American citizens to be injured. It is long past time for leftists to be subject to the same lawful scrutiny everybody else is. So in the meantime, though, this past weekend was simply another excuse for Antifa, anarchist elements, to riot, to strike, to injure, to act violently because, after all, at the base, they simply enjoy it. So I continue with that article. But the Mercury News report, citing Berkeley's law enforcement authorities directly, made it clear that police knew that Antifa intended to cause violence and allowed it to happen. Berkeley Police Chief Andrew Greenwood defended how police handled the protest, saying they made a strategic decision to let the anarchists enter to avoid any violence. That was admitted in public. That's evidence. Greenwood said the, quote, potential use of force became very problematic, unquote, given the thousands of peaceful protesters in the park. Once anarchists arrived, it was clear there would not be dueling protests between the left and right, so he ordered his officers out of the park and allowed the anarchists to march in. There will be overtime. I am left temporarily speechless that this has now become what my law enforcement is in way too many jurisdictions in this state and in other states. He ordered his officers out of the park. Let that sink in for a little bit. By the way, for people not aware, it's 2017. This is happening in 2017. It's not 1923. There's no beer hall putsch going on. Or maybe I didn't see it. Or is there? The Associated Press corroborated that report. Quote, Berkeley Police Chief Andrew Greenwood said officers were told not to actively confront the anarchists. He applauded officers' restraint, saying it forestalled greater violence. So, another if-then equation. If he's admitting this now, then when he allowed elements of Antifa and right-leaning people to clash on prior occasions, that too was orchestrated. This is prior knowledge, prior thought, conspiracy, 182 PC, Federal Code, Deprivation of Civil Rights, 42 USC 1983. I am going into overtime because I am going to continue my thought process here for those who have to go Betty by. I understand you can listen to this in podcast, but folks, I'm going to continue being live. I have to go to the end of this thought. I have to go to the end. I have to tell you where this is leading and why. I can't stop now. My apologies, but we're going to continue. There's a top of the hour break. Please, if you're interested, please. I'm coming right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads radio show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Folks, we're back. I think there's going to be another segment. My guess is maybe another half hour. I know for a fact there's no one on after me, so this air belongs to me right now, and I'm going to use it because I'm going to finish my thought. I've been talking about Antifa. I've been talking about the riots. I've been talking about leftists and how these elements in concert want to take down your society, want to take down the United States of America. And again, why my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net says I am pushback. Now more than ever, I am pushback. I'm not taking this anymore. I'm pushing back as much as I possibly can. And I'm cutting checks to organizations and to people that are just like everyone else in congruence with my philosophy, which is a sustainable philosophy. Leftism is not sustainable. Antifa is not sustainable. The American media maggots being leftists in newsrooms across the country, it's not stable, it's not sustainable, and you're seeing the results of it. Newsrooms are bleeding readers, viewers, and advertisers because people realize they have an agenda, and it's whatever the hell the Democrats want and leftists themselves, because 95% of the newsrooms across the fruited plain all vote Democrat anyway, but they won't admit it because they, and only they, have the ability to be non-biased, except that they're the most biased of all. And that's what we've been talking about. Now, recently I was talking about Berkeley PD and the riots that occurred this weekend in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, when a group called Patriot Prayer came to have a rally. And it was not replete with white nationalists, because you would have seen that splayed all over the media. And you didn't. So if you didn't, then they weren't there. David Duke wasn't there. Tons of people in sheets were not there. But I'm going to go back to Berkeley PD. And so I say this to the apparently scattered few police officers on the Berkeley Police Department who actually want to uphold their law enforcement oaths, and they're obviously, to me, a shockingly deficient number of you. It is long, long past due time to make a stand. At some point, you're going to have to. Do you stay or do you go? Do you fillet the leftist cock of your local government, or do you leave it to do some actual good for a department that will truly appreciate your talents, your sacrifice, and your courage, your training, your education, your experience. Because, frankly, Berkeley PD never will. It's not unlike this. Chief Greenwood said that in order to avoid violence, we just need to walk away. Okay, how about this? There's a dispatcher that says, attention all units, 211 in progress, Bank of America, Main and 51st. 2 masked males with handguns. Unit to respond, a unit says Paul 17 en route from Franklin and 17th. Another unit, Paul 19, says, well, en route from Josiah and Henry. And a third unit says Sam 5 from Henry and Stockton. And then the chief gets on the air and says, units stand down, reduce code, clear the call. Citizens and suspects could be injured by your response and your interference. Is that where we're going? Is that where the city of Berkeley is going? And would they truly feel comfortable with that? Or would that oppressed person, he or she, they just need the money, so why shouldn't you let them take it? No, I'm not kidding. This is where we are in some departments, in some areas, in some municipalities, in some leftist states. And the above. Berkeley PD obviously standing and watching. Here's a video. I'm going to play it if you want to actually see it, because it's worth seeing and hearing. You're only going to hear part of it. But here's a video shot at the earlier Berkeley PD riots earlier this year. And here's a bunch of cops that are standing and watching what's going on. And this is covered by actually a leftist journalist who captured this on the media.
Hey, how come you guys are hanging back?
Let me play this again. I didn't have the volume up. And he asks a very good question. And then the one officer is a smug, very, very smug officer. But let's listen to the question. It's a very innocent question and a proper question.
Hey, how come you guys are hanging back?
That would be a good question for the chief of police.
The officer sitting in the car says, that would be a good question for the chief of police.
I mean, I haven't seen the cops around people and just like beating the shit out of each other.
A public statement, right?
No, I'm just asking you guys. I mean, you're here.
I would defer you to our public information officer.
So they told you to hang back?
As I said, I defer you to our public information officer.
Why is he not saying? Because he knows full well if he says what the officer sitting in the automobile said, his career could be at jeopardy. And truly, if I knew the name of that officer sitting in the car, I would ask if he were given a reprimand for saying that and caught on video, because this video, by the way, happened to go semi-viral all across the community, though it was taken by a leftist journalist.
What's your next question?
I mean, I'm just wondering why I've been watching all day. People get beat up pretty bad. I haven't seen you guys around much.
Yeah, and you can hear the riots in the background, can't you? You can hear it in the background. By the way, this guy's name is Shane Bauer, at Shane Bauer. If you want to see this video, that's his Twitter account, at Shane Bauer, Bauer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And?
I want you to hear the response of the officer again, what he said.
You guys around much?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And?
That's his response. You guys aren't around much. His response is, okay, and? Okay, and? Oh, okay. Okay, and how about you honor the law enforcement oath you took when your badge was pinned on by your wife, your husband, your parents, a loved one upon graduation? And in the state of California, your oath goes just like this. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Standing back, is that discharging his duty? It's called an oath. And that's what he and others in the city of Berkeley Police Department swore to uphold. Not anarchy, not Antifa, not chaos, not insurrection, calm and order and the rule of law. On the blog, and it's classic, I put it there. If you haven't seen it, you need to go to the blog, bloviatingzeppelin.net, and look at this video, which did in fact go viral, of this black mother grabbing her black Antifa son, slapping the crap out of him, and pulling him out of the crowd and taking him home. Some people bitched about having violated the law, but not yet afforded their rights to incredible luxuries nowhere else on the planet. You know, here's an individual. Gosh, I got to play this first, or else you won't understand the. You're going to have to listen to this very carefully. I might have to turn it up just a bit. Here is an Antifa female who is saying that she needs her service dog. Oh, she's under arrest. She's under arrest, but she needs her service dog. She's arrested by Berkeley PD. Oh, it's terrible because she's black and there's a black male officer that has her in thrall. Amazing. How does that happen?
I need my service. My wife, he's supposed to be with me. Back, move. He's supposed to be with me. Fuck you, pigs. My
Let's walk to the gate. Hey, all the way to the gate. All the way to the gate.
She needs her service animal. When people got arrested in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, did they need their service animals?
I need my service animal! Get back! I need my fucking service animal! Back up! I need my fucking service animal!
She needs her fucking service animal. Even the rioters these days are second class. How sad is that? Note to the bitcher of this. Perhaps you should have left your service dog at home, but no. You happen to be what I call a forfer. You're a black. You're a female. You're a leftist. You're a recipient of a service dog. All probably at taxpayer expense, yes? Don't know for sure, gotta say that. Because I'm sure you had the thousands and thousands of dollars required to have your claimed dog trained, didn't you? Oh, wait, but wasn't that probably on the taxpayer's hook? Or was it? Well, I wonder. I have to wonder. But wait, stop. Be still, my clotted heart. Am I hearing what I think I may be hearing for only a microsecond or three? Then there were the people who had the temerity and naked audacity to suggest that they had a right to protest nonviolently. Note, nonviolently. So I'm going to go back to Tucker Carlson because remember I told you about Patriot Prayer. They were the group who believe in the free speech of people. They go to leftist communities. They believe in the First Amendment. They believe in nonviolence. They disavow white supremacists and racism and bigotry. So let's listen to Tucker Carlson interview that one particular individual who got his arse handed to him on tape, on video, this past weekend. And gosh, did the Berkeley Police Department do anything about it? Yeah, they did. They did. Do you know what they did? Listen, and you'll hear what it is that they did.
Ever published. Police themselves told the San Francisco Chronicle the two were not arrested, but instead were rescued from dangerous protesters. Not exactly clear what happened. That's why we wanted to have Joey Gibson back on the show. He joins us tonight. Joey, a good friend of mine, Matt Labash, who's a reporter, was covering you, called me last night after all this happened and said he'd never seen anything like it. This violence just erupted out of nowhere so fast, all aimed at you. A couple obvious questions. There are police all around. Why did none of them come to your aid as you were being beaten in the head and pepper sprayed?
Well, we've talked to quite a few police officers. Most police officers, they join the force because they want to help people out in these situations. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's people higher up who are not allowing them to do it. Trust me, they didn't want to stand around and just watch, okay? We have mayors all over California and in this country that are using the police forces for their own political gain.
Did you I just want to be totally clear. This is the third time you've been on this show. You've been repeatedly described as...
Stop. I can't take this. I have to tell the truth. I was a sergeant. I retired a sergeant in a major metropolitan sheriff's department in the state of California. That department had 2,000 plus personnel on the department. I was the departmental range master. I was the departmental evac supervisor, and I was everywhere. Many people were sad to see me leave because I believed in upholding the law. And when I needed to take a stand, I took a stand. And I backed my arguments with facts and evidence. And that's one of the reasons politically I was never promoted to lieutenant, and I was told by a chief that I should never take the lieutenant's test because I fronted him because he wanted to do something unethical, in my opinion, so I took a stand. I say to those officers in Berkeley PD, I say to those particular sergeants wearing stripes in Berkeley PD, it's time to take a stand. All it takes is one courageous sergeant to make a stand, to make a move, and the rest of his or her troops will follow. They will follow. You need to be a leader. There are no leaders on the Berkeley Police Department, and that is what is so terribly disquieting and disturbing to me. It's despicable. And I don't just bandy that word about. I've been exactly where they are, and I know what they're doing and not doing, and they can't convince me otherwise.
As an alt-right figure, a white supremacist, a white nationalist, you've said that none of that is true, and I believe you. I just want to be clear. Did you say anything provocative, use racial slurs? Did you say anything before you were just pepper sprayed and hit in the head?
No, we constantly preach love. It's our thing. That's what we want to do. We want to preach love, unity, and peace. These things are really important. We have to have that in our country. We walked in there, giving the peace sign with our hands up. Now, we knew that there was a potential that people would try to, assault us.
By the way, that's on video. If you doubt anything that he says, it's all covered on video.
But that's why we had our hands up, because we didn't want to be aggressive. We didn't want to go in there like we want to fight. We just want to be able to go in there and exist in America. That's all we want to do. We want to be able to exist in the middle of a public park, in Berkeley, or wherever that may be. And we were around a bunch of moderate liberals who were holding signs like love and peace and like nonviolence and all this stuff. And then they just sit there and watch, Antifa just barge in there and just start attacking all of us. And I'm just wondering, moderate left, like...
Okay, they meaning cops. They meaning law enforcement. They meaning the City of Berkeley Police Department. That's they.
How long are you going to stay silent on Antifa? Okay, the politicians, the mayor of Berkeley, the mayor in San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi, Feinstein, all of you. How long are you going to stay silent on Antifa? Because in their silence, it's almost like they're just using Antifa to their benefit to attack free speech.
Well, they're cowards. That's exactly right. They're cowards. One of the most...
They are cowards, and they're already aligned with leftist organizations who are violent and have been proven violent in the past, are violent currently, and will be violent in the future. Mayor Jesse Arreguin of the City of Berkeley is aligned clearly, publicly, on Facebook with By All Means Necessary, which is an Antifa violence-based organization. So you obviously know where it is that he stands. He says this, and not held to answer for any of it.
Upsetting things I've seen on tape in a long time is the end of the video that we just showed, where you're walking backward with your hands up. Someone throws a bottle of urine at you. Someone else hits you. There are police officers directly behind you.
Watch the video. There are police officers directly behind him, just as Tucker Carlson says.
Do nothing, and then you wind up in handcuffs. How did that happen?
I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to just de-escalate the situation, and I think that we're also in a secure area too. So I think they just want to put cuffs on us and walk us away to kind of see what's going on. Once they understood the situation.
Now I'm going to tell you why they did that. They did that to placate the crowd. They did that to placate their supervisors. They did that to placate their watch commanders. They did that to placate their captains, their deputy chiefs, their assistant chiefs. They did that to placate the chief of police. They did that so that he can placate the mayor and said, look, we took care of these terrible right-wing people. We handcuffed them. And they did. They put them in cuffs. When you place cuffs on someone, you're removing their rights. Are you not? Were they under arrest? Listen.
They took the cuffs off and they just started rinsing us off in a hose because I was pepper sprayed like 5 times.
So you don't think that that guy, after being pepper sprayed, would have walked on his own to a fire hose or to a water hose somewhere and willingly doused his face? No, he had to be handcuffed, did he not? Because otherwise he was going to run away. To what? He couldn't see. He'd already been pepper sprayed. That was a massive spray. It's orange, which tells me that because it comes at such great pressure, it was a 10 to 15-foot stream of that stuff. That's probably bear spray or commercial brand stuff that these people got. So obviously, both of these guys needed to be handcuffed in order to be convinced that water needed to be applied to make them feel better. Right?
I mean, did anyone get arrested? We're watching the video now. If you're getting hit in the head with a pole, there you are getting pepper sprayed. Did any of those people get arrested?
No.
I don't know. I know there's about 13 arrests yesterday. I don't know if any of that had to do with me, but we got to understand.
It's all on video. It's all on video.
And there was people there was journalists just getting beat in the streets for like 5 minutes. I mean, it was horrendous. It's a horrible thing that happened yesterday. I think America, you got to understand, like, a lot of people think that if you just leave Antifa alone, just don't talk about them and they'll just go away. No,
they won't.
We got to stand up to Antifa. You got to talk to your politicians. Say, do you support Antifa? Do you support their violent tactics? I mean, guys, if you go on YouTube
and if you ask a leftist politician that, they're going to make it an argument about white supremacists. They're going to make it an argument about white supremacists, and that Antifa needs to exist because of white supremacists who are like hundreds in nature. They've got no power, and everybody knows it. They come out to demonstrate because it gives them press. It gives them press.
You search up the film, there is horrendous things that happened yesterday. And this is America. Okay, this is America. This is where we should be able to go and just exist in public, say our part, just speak, just be Americans without the threat of violence, without people dressed in all black, covering up their faces, just beating people up, beating them to the pulp. I mean, there's a lot of...
That's the purpose of Patriot Prayer, to exert their rights and do it peacefully. Peacefully, non-violently, because had they been violent, you would have seen those videos displayed on all the alphabet news rooms throughout the United States 24/7. Had either one of those two individuals that you see in that video, two individuals, had they been violent, and it would have been all their fault.
Horrible injuries yesterday.
This is a political militia that is doing the bidding, in effect, of Nancy Pelosi and Governor Jerry Brown and the mayor of Berkeley and all these supposedly mainstream Democratic politicians. And this is a
they're mainstream for the state of California, or as I call it, Fornicalia.
Militia hurting American citizens for saying what they think.
And the police standing back and allowing it to happen in America.
It's terrifying. Joey, you're a brave man. I appreciate your coming on tonight again.
Thank you.
Up ahead, we'll bring you more coverage of what turned out to be disastrous flooding in the state of Texas.
This literally makes me heartsick. This makes me physically nauseous. But the ultimate realization makes me even more concerned. You have two legs and at least something of a brain. You can decide to leave a room, turn off a television, stop reading, leave a website, put down the magazine, turn off the iPad, etc. Any number of logical and adult decisions can be made. Logical, adult decisions. You're not a stegosaurus. It required a semi-brain in its head, and it had a ganglion of nerves in its hips to make the legs walk. That's my ultimate point. Who has control? The receptor of the image, who is forced to say, click on, click off? Even Noam Chomsky believes in free speech and on campuses.
We now face the Christian American universities' student demands for so-called no platforming. So that, for example...
If you don't know Noam Chomsky, he's about as far left as you can get. Just about.
Germaine Greer has been denied a platform to speak because of her views on transgender people. What do you think about that practice?
No, I'm very much opposed to it. I've been subjected to it myself.
No platform.
For years, if I wanted to talk on the Middle East in an American university, I had to have police protection up until a few years ago. Airport security, if a meeting was even allowed, attacks on the attempts to remove the tenure of professors who'd invited me to talk.
Even leftists are being attacked.
That's much more extreme than what the students have been. I'm opposed to what they're doing, but it's a minor part. I think we should...
He says the students and what they're doing is a minor part, meaning it's the administration.
Really have open platforms in universities. If students don't like something that's being said, they can stay away.
Bingo,
but
thank you.
We should recognize that that's a very minor part of it. The major part is the closing off of options for people who are critical at the dissenting side from the overwhelming consensus at the university and outside.
Even Noam Chomsky is stating the obvious.
The Middle East is a very striking example. It's instantly changed in the last few years, but literally up until about, I'd say, 10 years ago, if I was giving a talk on the Middle East at my own university, I'd have to have police protection. There were times when the police would insist on walking me back to my car because of information they'd picked up about threats.
Stop. Here's something unique. They were actually doing their jobs.
And nobody ever protested this. This was considered fine.
But the heckler's veto did not prevail. The heckler's veto did not prevail.
Oh, sure, they broke up meetings. There were meetings that were literally broken up by hecklers.
The heckler's veto did prevail. You leftist UK British fucked it.
And nobody ever protested that. I didn't either. It's when students begin to veer in that direction on the other side that the protests begin. Now, I'm not defending what they're doing, but we should put it in context. The context is that preventing speech that is critical of the major consensus is never protested.
So, in short, to reformulate that, the guiding principle for university should be that there should be the widest possible range of views.
Exactly. Just as in my own reading, I read right across the spectrum, and that's what students should be exposed to.
That's what students should be exposed to. That's why universities exist. To listen and to process both sides of an argument that's no longer occurring. Even the massive left-leaning Noam Chomsky, even he agrees with that. Go to your favorite search engine and insert the name Noam, N-O-A-M, Chomsky, C-H-O-M-S-K-Y, and look at his background. I'm going to leave you with this one final thought. Were you cognizant of the fact the United States of America is one of the very, very, very few Western civilizations, Western countries left that does not have a hate speech law guaranteeing prosecution of that vastly nebulous phrase? Be thankful. Be very, very thankful. But be very, very mindful. And I have to say this. Be vigilant. And be prepared to defend your constitutional rights. Because I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that time is coming. I submit, perhaps, that time may be here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the overtime version of the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon here on the SHR Media Network. You want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at bzep. My blog is bloviatingzeppelin.net, and you can email me bz at shrmedia.com. My original intro music is by a great group called Possessed Tranquility. You can find them at reverbnation.com. Promotional consideration by Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, and the Boeing Company, because if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. Tiaras by My Little Pony. And thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consulting in less than an hour. So thank you for kindly listening tonight live, listening in podcast. Please, God bless, take care, be safe. See me tomorrow night in the Sackheads Radio Show, right here on shrmedia.com.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.